Hello.
everyone. So happy that you guys are here with us. This is a really, I've been really excited and looking forward to this conversation. So for those of you who are joining our office hours for the first time, this is something that we have been doing weekly now on Thursdays at 3 o'clock Eastern Standard. We have experts come in to answer your kind of most pressing questions. And this one is specifically for our lawyer and attorney clients and friends of our community. And this is really a treat. I'll give a quick introduction to Ernie. Ernie is an attorney, and he is also he's an automation and process guru, and he really leads attorneys and lawyers. I'd like to say to the light, right? You can go the long way, and you can figure things out for yourself, or you can have an individual that has walked the path kind of guide you in the process, and that's what Ernie does, and it's been incredible connecting with you, Ernie, and with your community. And so we've also have our assistants on the line as well, having, listening to this conversation. So not only do we have here in the room attorneys that are looking to better automate their processes and just be more efficient with their time so that they can focus on their zone of genius, we also have our assistants that are supporting this incredible community, and they want to learn what are the most important and pressing things. How can they serve this community better? And so before I give you an opportunity to introduce yourself, just want to remind everyone here, we really want to make this as interactive as possible. The purpose to have these conversations every week is for you to get as much value as you possibly can. Ernie is an absolute genius, and he has a huge community, and he does one-on-one coaching. And so really, you guys are, I feel very lucky that we're having this conversation. I'm really excited for our community to be able to get to receive the value from you. So really, any specific questions, I really encourage you to ask. So Ernie, would love to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself and kind of how to, maybe you can tell us, for some of us that here that don't know you, how did you come into this? It's not a traditional route that you took. So just want to introduce that to everyone.
Yeah, no, thank you. Well, I mean, thank you for having me. I love working with you. You were a huge breath of fresh air in a not completely fresh air world, because I was trying to figure out how to do outsourcing better. And, I don't say failed, but I've learned hard lessons from doing it, which have helped me. And, I liked your approach. And so I was really happy when we started working together. But I mean, what do I do? I'm not a genius, and I'm not, I don't know the end of the path. I'm on the path. I'm happy to help others who are on the path, or to explain to people why they should be on this path. And so what is the path? The path is, if you're a solo or small firm business owner of any kind, and this is true for lawyers, which are the folks that I mostly help, then you need to figure out how to run your business in a way that helps it do what it needs to do, get the work done without friction, without pain points as much as possible, so that you can enjoy yourself, right? Like, you don't want to have a business where it drives you into the ground. And technology can help, right? But it's not a magic bullet. And I guess that was the thing that hit me when I left my big firm. It was because I didn't think they understood how to use technology, or didn't have an inclination to use it. I wanted to go out and try it on my own. And so I went on my own, literally on my own. And I found that I could do a lot by myself, but I couldn't do everything by myself the way that I thought I was going to be able to. So I had to be really intentional and strategic, because I mean, I couldn't manufacture more time. Everything depended on my time. And so I think that's the case with any solo or small firm business owner, is that you have to manage your time, you have to manage your work, your projects, if you're a lawyer, or you can call them matters, whatever, whatever they are, but they're projects. And then you have to manage the people that you rely on to help you do this work. And you should rely on people to help you do the work, because there's only so much you can automate. There's only so much you can do or should be doing. And the rest of it, you should find people who want to do that work and are good at it and can do it so that you can focus on higher level things. So there's a lot more to making this happen than simply using technology or hiring people as outsourced people to help you. What the missing link, and this is, you're right, I am passionate about the idea of systems. And I don't consider myself a guru, because I'm learning, this process as I try to teach other people. And to me, documenting systems is kind of like writing. It is writing. You have to write it down, right? And what I've learned about writing, both from me doing it and examining what it feels like, and also trying to help other people write, is it feels terrible to write things down in the beginning, because you're not clear. And that feeling of uncertainty and confusion is not, a happy feeling. So a lot of people who don't have a strong writing habit just avoid it like the plague. But if you can power through that, then you're on your way. But writing a book is one thing. That's hard. Writing a brief is, if you're a lawyer, is hard. But writing down a checklist of things to be done by somebody else, while it may seem a little uncomfortable at first, just because you're not used to it, this is the pathway to the golden land. Because you can't have other people do work for you unless you can explain to them what you expect when they finish the work, right? Seems so obvious to say it that way, but it's not a common practice. And I said this yesterday in the session that Valerie and I were doing. And I related the story about, after having clerked for a federal judge for 2 years, who had a book that he called the Bible, because he was very Catholic, but it was our systems manual for Section H. Everything that needed to be done on a regular basis was in there. A lot of law stuff, but even included things like when to water the plants, because everything that was on his mind is like, that needs to be done by somebody other than me. It was in that book. So when I showed up, it was just this book. Read the book and do whatever you're supposed to do. He's not going to explain to me how to do my job, which I thought was a little unusual, because in every other chamber, the judge would meet with the new person and say, hey, it's nice to meet you. Let's have a cup of coffee. This guy was like, let's get going. Let's get work done. And he got a lot of work done, and I got a lot of work done, and I learned how to do it fast. But that manual was something I thought other successful people would have. When I went to work at the big firm, there was no manual. The first lawyer who gave me a job assignment explained to me what she thought I should do. I had no clue what she was talking about, even though I did really well in law school, had been researching stuff for 2 years. I was really good at doing a lot of things, but I did not understand what she said. And I could tell from the way she said it that she expected me to understand and to go do it. So I was like, well, if I ask any questions, she's going to, it's going to be an insult. Right. And that little window of insight has stayed with me, because I've noticed that is a common experience that most people have when they get instructions from somebody. And the less well you know them, the more that feeling is going to creep in. So that's another factor in when you give people assignments. When it comes back and wasn't done the way you wanted to, it might not be because they can't do it. It might be because you didn't give great instructions. So yeah, that's my mission in life, is helping people create better instructions.
Yeah, absolutely. Isn't it, we come with this, we experience this all the time, right? What you think that you said is very often not what you actually said. And it's actually thanks to Zoom that I've caught myself. I was like, I'm positive I'm going to go back and I'm going to spend the time. I'm going to find that. And I'm like, actually, I didn't say that. I thought it and I didn't say it. And that happens a lot to entrepreneurs. So when you talk about, documenting systems, I know Ernie, we got connected through Ari Mizell, and part of Ari's process is you have to have a second person look at what you do. So whether you're the one who's writing the processes or you're getting support in getting those processes documented, either way, someone else who's never seen the process, who's never done that work, who doesn't have a single login, has to go and try to test it and do it themselves. And 10 out of 10 times, there's going to be definitely something that for you just happens on autopilot. That is actually a blocker for that person to complete it. So, I think that that's really interesting. And I know that, everyone here in the room, has specific questions, because there are, I know Marla, we connected yesterday, and I was like, this is exciting that, you're coming in here and you have an opportunity, to ask Ernie your questions, because, specifically to the sphere of lawyers and attorneys, we get a lot of questions about, what would you say are like the specific bare minimum systems that lawyers and attorneys need to start creating for themselves? Like, if someone is coming to you with not a lot, where do you usually have them start?
So what we do is systems workshop, and I'm going to do another version of it, the intensive part, in January. Although people can register and start learning right away. But in having done the systems workshop, now it'll be like the 7th time, I would ask people, well, what do you want to work on? And then what I realized is the best thing to work on with the systems is something that repeats, right? Because if it's repeating, and the greater the frequency of repetition, the faster you're going to see whether it's working or not, or what's not working in it. So that's the first place to go. So you'll look for something that's happening repetitiously with short intervals, not repeating once a month or once a week, but ideally once a day or something like that. And then also look at things that are happening at the beginning of a business relationship. So for lawyers, when they take on a new client, there's a lot of flurry of activity that happens. They have to sign an engagement letter. They have to check for conflicts. There's a bunch of things that have to happen in the early part of that relationship, which I think is probably true for kind of any business. There's a lot that goes on in the beginning. Like there was when I signed up with ChatterBoss. You had to ask me a lot of questions. We had to go through a lot of things. Okay, so that part, which may not, we don't know how often that repeats in every business, but it's super important. Okay, so you're merging super important and repetitious. Those are the things you want to start with. And then, because you're going to get to see people coming through, and you're going to realize, like, oh, wait, they had a question about that. In fact, today I was chatting with one of the lawyers I help, and she was mentioning that somebody came to, she does jury consulting. She's now not practicing completely. And in the jury consulting work, people have to, she works with them to help them figure out how to find the best jury and how to, prepare the case in the best way or whatever. And so this woman shows up, that was, that hired my friend, and brings like 6 people and starts questioning all kinds of things. And she said, this is horrible. What should we do about this? I'm like, well, do you have like an onboarding agreement where you explain what they should expect and everything else? And she said, no. I said, okay, well, we know the first thing that's going to go in that agreement, right? Like everything, you just, instead of stopping and reacting to things and going, that was terrible, let me fix it, always be asking, what can I do to make this problem go away or minimize in the future? That is systems thinking. That's how we need to think about our businesses.
And is there anything, that's specific to this specific grouping of professionals where you might imagine that it's maybe it's harder to integrate workflows, or to integrate other people from like a confidentiality? I know that like in the space of healthcare, we run into things all the time that kind of that prevents the ability for kind of running with full efficiency that we see entrepreneurs in other maybe less regulated industries get to enjoy. So just kind of curious, what are the limitations and how do you advise to go around them?
So first off, I'm going to say something that you probably won't hear a lot of lawyers say. When I try to figure out a problem like that, like, okay, let's say it's, because healthcare, you immediately think of HIPAA. Yeah. HIPAA is this thing. I don't know. I have not met a person on planet Earth yet who will say that they think HIPAA is a good idea in the way that it's working now. It was one of those things, somebody thought it was a good idea. On the drawing board, maybe it looked like a good idea, but in practice, it's a horrible idea for lots of reasons that we could get into. But that kind of law, and a lot of these things that are laws or regulations, and this is what I mean by I'm not going to speak like a lawyer generally, because I look at stupid laws and stupid regulations and think, yes, how can I get around this without getting into trouble? So sometimes, not getting into trouble means you just do it and hope that nobody finds out about it. Again, completely, Angela is a lawyer. She's here. I'm sure she's wincing, but that's how entrepreneurs think. That's how, to innovate, you have to go around what is a perceived barrier. So there's always a way around problems. Okay. There just is. It may not be you get around it quickly. It may be you hit some bumps in the road, but everything you want to accomplish can be accomplished. Now, there are trade-offs, right, to various things like security, as you and I talked about yesterday, is a trade-off. It's always a trade-off, right? Like perfect security, which doesn't exist, but whatever approximates it, is going to be the biggest pain in the ass to deal with for any human being. So the only people who are going to put up with that are highly trained spies and people in professions where that's critical, right? And even then, that information gets out. See, for example, the Edward Snowden thing, you can't keep information locked down. At the other end of the spectrum, there's like no security at all, really easy to deal with, leave your doors unlocked, let people come and go. Yeah, that's easy, but it's not good. So somewhere in the middle, you have to have the balance. Now, the balance should be sensible, right? And so a lot of times what people try to do when they're trying to protect themselves, and when I say people, I mean lawyers do this, more than as much as anybody. They'll have this unsettling feeling that we must prevent things from going wrong because that's the mindset of a lawyer. Yes. And then they say, I'm going to make a sweeping statement or a sweeping generalization, and I'm going to live with that. So, for example, at the bottom of a lot of lawyers' emails, you'll see a thing that says, if you receive this transmission in error, please notify the recipient right away. Okay, that's because lawyers have this weird thing where if you inadvertently reveal a secret, the other side, if it's a lawyer, is not supposed to then take advantage of it, but you have to notify them right away. And so the theory, and it's a flimsy theory, is that if you've put this little disclaimer at the bottom of the email, this will protect you. Well, that's a blanket, why would you put that at the bottom of every email? You send it to your friends, that's in there? Because it's easy, because I just slap it in there and I don't have to think about it anymore. And that's my objection with that mindset, is like, if there's a trade-off involved, then let's think about, does it apply every time? No, it doesn't. Okay, the level of security is not the same all the time for everybody. So put on your thinking cap, because that's what you're supposed to do, and figure it out. And then when you've got your thinking cap on, you can create alternative scenarios, automations, whatever, to deal with the alternative scenarios. But simply saying, oh, look at me, I thought about it once, and I've applied this blanket solution that really isn't a solution. It's just getting it off your plate and it's covering your ass. And that's low-level thinking, which I have no respect for. That's not the way to operate, right? Like, it's not that much harder. It's really not hard at all to think a little bit and set up systems to account for variances and what needs to be done. And I know that's kind of an overview, but I had to get my rant in. So
well, first of all, I want to say, for this community here, guys, if you have specific questions, which I know that you do, if you are stuck somewhere right now that you are feeling like you are drowning in some kind of a system that is currently not working, or you're feeling like there's some kind of an unsolvable problem, you have an expert here. So please, feel free to unmute yourself. Marla, I know you have a question because you were asking.
Or you can type it in the chat. If you don't want to unmute yourself, type it in the chat.
You can type it in the chat. You're so kind. I always want to have the interactions, but you're right. Yeah. People can put it in the chat. But the thing, that, as you were saying, right, when we have conversations with lawyers, with attorneys that are just getting started, from our experience, there are so many questions. there are a lot of
Mhm.
questions and there is a lot of caution, and it makes total sense because of the way that the industry is set up, because of the way that the laws are. And so what we notice is that more than the business owners in other professions, this is the one that treads super carefully. And I know that we have on the line here our assistants as well, and so it's like, how do we as an organization support knowledge workers, lawyers, attorneys, and kind of minimize some of those worries and some of the roadblocks that they have? How can we be proactive in
Mhm.
solving for some of those, for some of those things? And I think that one thing that we know is that if we have awareness of what those kind of points of not contention, but those points of struggle are,
Mhm.
then we can, then we can proactively come with those solutions.
Yeah. Well, that's what was involved with the example I gave earlier about my friend. She didn't anticipate this problem, and then it occurred. But what was interesting to me was her first thought was to look somewhere else. I was like, well, wait, where's your onboarding agreement? I thought she had one. So why don't you update that? She said, oh, yeah, I think we talked about that and I haven't created it yet. So like the awareness is the key. But the problem with the awareness is you can tell people you should be aware, but I mean, come on, like that doesn't make people aware. Like they're busy, they're distracted, whatever, and then they're not aware. And sometimes what part of the lack of awareness is not being, I don't want to say paranoid because I mean, that's not going to solve it, but be understanding human nature. Like that's the biggest one, I think. And that has been like the biggest epiphany I've had about, when I went into the practice of law, my dad, who was a shrink, he always
Mm,
like, oh, I think, it'd be great if you'd go into the profession and be a doctor, and especially if you'd be a psychoanalyst like me. And I'm like, no, I don't want to be a psychoanalyst.
specifically.
I don't want to deal with people's problems. And then I realized, like, not long into practicing law, I'm like, wait a minute, like I'm like a therapist. I'm a counselor a lot of the times. I'm helping people, and I have to anticipate what they're going to do that makes no sense at all to me, and maybe to a lot of people, but to them it seems like a prudent thing to do. And then if I don't warn them away from it, they're going to step off a cliff and make a mistake. And this happens all the times. Clients will do things, and if you don't tell them, hey, look, for example, like, you need to tell me everything that maybe is uncomfortable,
Mm,
because we have an attorney client privilege. I can't tell anybody, but if you don't tell me the uncomfortable things about this problem you have,
yes.
then it's going to come back to bite both of us in the ass, because if it comes out, I can't, it's harder for me to prepare a response than to, prepare to avoid the problem. And you can tell people that till you're blue in the face. They're not going to tell you. So what does that mean? Well, it means they're uncomfortable telling people those problems. So you can't get off the hook by just rattling off this little pre-canned speech and hoping that they tell you. You have to tell them in a way that draws it out. Is it going to work 100% of the time? No, but it's going to work way better than assuming just because you utter words, humans hear those words and then follow the instructions contained in those words. You can dispense with that assumption immediately. That is not how the world works. And yet we operate as though that is how the world works a lot of the times.
Yeah, absolutely. We relate to that a lot. I think that a lot of industries, it's kind of, as we automate and as we have more technology, the more there is this need for human connection, human interaction. And I think that kind of the key to success as we grow, right, is merging this tech piece with psychology. There's no other way.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
further we are, the more remote we are, the more guesses we have to make
Yeah.
about each other. And so I really like that. That's the place where you come from when you look at structuring different problems and working with your communities.
Well,
And
that's the secret. So let me just say one thing. That what I just said there is actually, in not just my opinion, that is the secret to all success in business, or
Mhm.
most of the success. And as proof of that, I will say that, we all know who Warren Buffett is. He's super wealthy a billionaire, but his sidekick is a guy named Charlie Munger who practiced law. He is an attorney, went to Harvard, he's a smart guy. And Charlie Munger was asked, like, what is the most successful thing as far as, in business? What is it? He goes, it equals, this is it for life. Business life, here's the most successful thing. So the ability to see the world from other people's perspective. All right. So when I heard that, I thought that was the first time I started to think about this. And I thought, if that's really true, if I reflect on this, I'll be able to find examples and see if that sounds like just kind of sounds nice, but not really true, or if it's really true. And I now believe it is absolutely true. That is the secret to everything. That's the secret to marketing. It's a secret to persuasion. It's a secret to negotiation. It's a secret to communicating with people. I mean, where raising your kids, like, where does this not come into play? Everywhere.
Absolutely, right. And, there's so much that we can say about that. And when we consider that from just, going back to the conversation about SOPs, right, or our processes or our documents, anything that we create within our business, all of that is communication. And when we create those kind of pieces of documentation, and why we test them is specifically so that not to create kind of empathy for the person doing it, right? But you start to see from another person's perspective. I love that image. I don't know if I'm sure that you've seen, it's like, two people staying in opposite ends, and they're looking at the letter, W, and one person is saying, this is a W, and the other person is saying, this is a letter, this is the 3. And they're like, I'm absolutely positive that the person across from me is a complete moron. And there are so many times that we see that, where you look at something and you say, this is yellow, and the person is looking, it's purple, and somehow the light is hitting different, and you would just never imagine. So I love that we brought that into this conversation, right? Because this conversation is about processes and procedures, and it's about technology and automation. And how does this piece about psychology and communication play in? But it's at the very core of all of this work that we do, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I'll say one more place that it comes into play, because that there's a guy who I recommend if you're interested in security and keeping up with security, cybersecurity. His name is Bruce Schneier. And he's written several books. So if you Google him and find his books, you can read about it. But he, when I first started reading it, about him, he said, like, all of the security, it all depends on technology. Technology will make it all perfect. We're going to use computers. It's going to be great. And then after all, I was like, you know what? I forgot about the humans. The humans are the weak link here, right? And so he talks about that, and that kind of insight made me realize, like, again, it applies everywhere, like how we think about things. And the way that hackers mostly get into people's computers, most hackers get into most people's computers most of the time using simple little hacks that they get the script from somebody else. You don't even need to know how it works, but the psychology is what makes it work. So people will click on links if they're thinking it's something curious that they want to click on. They will click on a link more readily if it comes from a friend than some stranger. So the hack is get into somebody's computer, have it spray out emails to everybody that they know saying, I can't believe this picture of you naked on the internet. And then there's a link and people are going to see it and go, oh my God. And they click. That's it. Game over. The hacker is now in control of your device. But you see, that is not dependent on technology. It's dependent on communication, understanding how people tend to react to certain things, and then orchestrating it so that reaction occurs. And it happens at scale. And that's how they got into Hillary Clinton's emails, because the campaign manager clicked on one of those things. It's called phishing, PHISING. And it's been going on forever. So this isn't even like new tricks that they're using. It's the same old ones based on human psychology.
Yeah. And, I've said before that, like, and especially when we're talking about, security, when working with others, we want to be able to prevent any kind of worst case scenario, just in general. And again, I think specific to this group, to this profession, there is just this thread of wanting to anticipate everything that can possibly be anticipated, but it's kind of, I'm trying to think of like an agnostic saying, right? But what's coming up for me is, like we plan and God laughs, right? Or like these unforeseen circumstances. And I've seen really brilliant, smart people get hacked, right? And it's just something that happens to the best of us. And so when we put systems and processes and workflows, then we really minimize the chances of this happening. And so I wanted to change gears a little bit and talk about software in specific, right? So as a company supporting different businesses, different types of industries, what we've had the experience of that most software is industry agnostic. That the best project management system is the best project management system, right? And the best place to do invoicing and bookkeeping is the best place, right? Or kind of the top ones. But as we continue working with lawyers and attorneys, there are specific software and it's specific to the industry, and it seems to be making a big difference. So we just really love to know from your perspective, which are the groupings that you feel like whatever is on the market for the general entrepreneur works, and where are the areas that people should really look for specific software that are built for lawyers and attorneys.
So my belief is that all things being equal, and maybe even being slightly unequal, you always want to opt for software that's for the general public, because look, in reality, we're all knowledge workers, right? Like, so project management software, I agree, the best project management software is the one you want to use in most cases. If you're a lawyer, a lot of lawyers will say, well, wait, we have to think about the lawyer specific practice management software. And maybe you do, but maybe you don't. But a lot of lawyers have this inculcated belief that the only place that they should be looking is in what it was designed for lawyers. Here's why I believe it's better to take the general rather than the practice or industry specific. And that is because if you stop and think about it, and it's always a good idea to stop and think about things. If you stop and think about it, you realize that if what's going on in this project management tool, which is just a database, okay? I don't care what it looks like on the top, underneath, it's a database. And it's a relational database. Okay, you could build your own relational database almost now with something like Airtable. But if somebody's going to sell you a pre-built relational database for the purpose of project management, the odds are that it's going to have been stress tested and tested for security problems and tested for what's optimally the best for the most people with the widest possible audience, right? Like, it's not that lawyers are going to introduce something novel that needs to stress test it. So lawyers using practice management software designed specifically for them, again, all things being equal, they're going to pay more for it because, I mean, it's niche marketing for starters. It was extra special to market it to lawyers who are more resistant or whatever. It says, that's what Clio, which is like the industry leader in the lawyer world, they charge a lot for something that might be able to be done somewhere else. Now, it's possible that there are other lawyer-specific tools you use for whatever reason, and Clio integrates with those. Well, okay, then now we're getting outside of the all things being equal or roughly equal, and you're saying my life will be made better because I'm going to use, this special thing with some other special things, and they all more tightly integrate. Great. But again, zoom out. There's this thing called Zapier, and that's not the only one, that lets anything with an API integrate with other things with APIs. So pretty much any big, software, cloud-based software is going to integrate with Zapier. And if it integrates with Zapier, you're going to be able to make it integrate with whatever else you need to. Now, again, extra steps, maybe you don't want to do that. But I'm just saying that as a general principle, don't be so quick to go after the industry specific thing, especially if you're paying a lot more for it, unless you know why you're paying more for it and you want that.
And So it's I didn't know that. I'm learning something new
Mhm.
about your perspective on it. Um, Something that we used to that we say to our entrepreneurs when entrepreneurs come, for example, to work with a remote assistant. Some will say, "Hey, I would really like to work with an assistant that has specific experience in my industry, and that's very important." And
Mhm.
what we've always said is something along the lines of this, right? Where if you have an assistant that is supporting entrepreneurs in a number of different industries, that is an added benefit to you as the entrepreneur because they may have some experience, they have some knowledge, but they also have these other industries. And I like how you use the words like stress tests, right? Because at the very core of it, running a business, whether you're a lawyer, whether you're a doctor, whether you're in technology, whether you're a life coach or a psychiatrist, things end up like when you really break them down to their very core, end up being very similar. And the
Mhm.
processes, the best practices in one industry usually cross over. And also, the beauty of it is sometimes that one industry caught on faster than another, that this is something that's working. So when you're working with remote assistants who have that kind of exposure, it's that faster knowledge transfer, and then everyone benefits. So
Yeah.
I've never, I haven't heard it you said in the way that you said it, but it's
Mhm.
very much in line with the way that we see it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, look, we're knowledge workers. Like I tell this to lawyers, stop thinking of yourself as only a lawyer and start thinking of yourself as a knowledge worker, which is a person who gets paid for their knowledge, right?
Mm.
And you get paid more for high level knowledge than you do for, data wrangling. Or if you can't get paid for it, then you're wasting time on things you shouldn't be wasting time on. So we're all knowledge workers. So and the tools we're using are all the same tools. There isn't a computer that's built specifically for a lawyer. Microsoft Office doesn't come, for specifically for lawyers. We're using the same tools. So if we start thinking like that, you're right. We think inside of a certain box. And I don't I agree. I wouldn't want to have as my virtual assistant somebody who'd only been experienced in the legal world, because first of all, I have direct experience with this. When I went to work at the big firm, well, nice thing is they, would assign you a secretary and they would vet the secretary. They had an HR person who would narrow it down to three candidates, bring in the three for you to interview with your other attorney you were sharing this assistant with, and then you'd pick the one you wanted from. So all that process is something that takes a lot of effort and time. But in the end, you get this wonderful person. So I had like three amazing secretaries. I had others that were pretty good, but three that could like read my mind almost and do things. But that was because the world we operated in was very predictable. And it had been a long time for all these things to come. Like computers were just starting to come in, word processing just starting to come in. And at the firm, when I went there, the word processing machine was so sophisticated I couldn't even run it, and I knew how to use computers. It was like a Wang thing, and it was like had to be in a room with air conditioning. The secretaries had to be trained for like 2 weeks. So there was a lot of really specialized knowledge. Well, over time, as technology invaded, you needed to learn Word, and everybody knew how to use Word, and you need to learn how to use email, and everybody was using the same email. And what I noticed was the best secretary was no longer the one who had all those instinctive skills, but the one who could adapt, or the
Mm.
one who had an open mind and was willing to adapt. The last secretary I had was very open-minded, and I would show her how to do stuff with paperless and all this, and she was fine with that. But other secretaries were not. Like, no, that's not my traditional job. I don't want to do that. So yes, you want somebody who looks outside of a very narrow domain and says, wait a minute, something over there is going on that's working really well. Maybe I should try that. And to me, it kind of calls to mind that statement, which the entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley love to say, the Wayne Gretzky, the great hockey player, said he was great because he would skate to where the puck was going to be. And they
Mhm.
use this to say, like, look at where things are going and go there, and you don't want to be the bleeding edge, but start moving to where things are going to be, because if you're doing that, you're going to get up to speed sooner and faster and better. And it's not going to be as frustrating if you wait till the last possible moment. This is a new operating principle for the modern world. If you're going to wait till the last moment when everyone has adopted everything, and this is another quote, William Gibson, the future is here, it's just not evenly distributed. Meaning
Mhm.
some people are doing things that other people go, boy, in the future, they'll be doing this. Like, dude, they're doing it now. Okay. You're just not aware of it because you're not on the cutting edge. And so you don't necessarily want to operate at the cutting edge, but you need to be looking at what's coming down the pike and not resisting it, but instead asking yourself, how can I exploit this? Not how can I get run over by it in my, dogmatic resistance. How can I exploit this? That's your job, to exploit opportunities. So if they're there, you should exploit them. And technology is creating them faster than we can exploit them.
And you and Angela seem to be really on the same wavelength, because as you were talking and she was typing, and you guys simultaneously almost use the exact same words of, of the benefits of working with individuals across different industries. So you guys are so in sync. But something that you were saying, made me think about the speed at which someone who is creating their own firm and moving from a larger organization, the speed at which they need to embrace getting help, because we see people coming in at the very beginning. We see them coming in when they're starting to get busy, and then we see people kind of waiting potentially too long, right? Or they're just they're kind of in the thick of it, and now it feels much harder or burdensome to onboard someone. But it made me think about I guess the luxury of a larger organization or a larger firm is that you do have that help. And we spoke recently with a group of women who are transitioning from C-suite executive roles within major corporations, and they're starting to use those skills to branch out into their own coaching practices, and in their own, they're becoming entrepreneurs. And for those individuals, it's really hard being without an assistant. They've gotten used to the fact that there is somebody, and so to kind of start without that, it's like almost like you're without an extra limb. You've operated in this way. So we do see kind of like the life cycle of entrepreneurs in other industries, even though really the recommendation is start really little, but start right away, because the administrative burden is born in the moment that your idea is born.
Yeah.
Because the very first action you have to take, right, is administrative.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think of it. So here's like a imagery metaphor for this, because people are either in one of two positions with work, or both. One, they're dealing with a lot of drudgery that they don't like, or they're just overwhelmed with maybe even some stuff that they don't mind doing. Okay. That is where most people are. And if you're solo entrepreneur or whatever, for sure, you are experiencing both of those either simultaneously or alternatively. And even if you're a small business, you're going to experience this. Okay. So your time is limited. So what can you do to begin to escape from this? It's like being in a boat that capsized and sank, and you're trapped, and you have very little air in the place where you are, right? Like you have just enough to realize that you're about to run out of air and die. Except that you realize, if you think about it, wait, over in the next cabin, there might be some air there. I can swim over there and find it. Okay, you swim over there, you find it. Now you got your head above, you got at least enough air to put your head there. You can really start to think about what you need to do next, and what you need to do next now, because you have your wits about you, is swim to the place where there's a scuba tank, and you get the scuba tank, and then you can swim to the surface, right? Like you can't get to the surface in one step. And if you try, you'll die, or you'll fail in the case of the desperate entrepreneur who just wants to quickly grab a new person and give them work. You have to go to the first place, which is make a list of all the things you really need somebody else to do, that it's realistic that person can do for you. And then if you can, take the time to say, here's how I want it done, spend time preparing all this. And then when you go get this person from ChatterBoss or wherever, that's a scuba tank. You swim to the surface and you're free. You are free. Like, you've now gotten so much freedom that you have breathing room, but you don't have breathing room where you are now, because nothing's going in your favor, and you can't get to the breathing room you need in one step. That's my message. I believe this very strongly.
We're very, very much, in line with you. And it feels so good, that there's the ability to have these kind of conversations that, like, really the industry, we can watch it evolving in front of our eyes, because before, there was very little conversation about how to get started, and that was the default. Just throw everything onto this person, and when they most definitely fail and disappoint you, then something is wrong with them. And so, and it would create this chain. And and so it's wonderful to be having those conversations. I see a question from Tiffany.
Yeah. What were your biggest pain points? I bet you we all share a lot of the same ones. So don't be shy about asking or mentioning what your pain points were. But I mean, that was my pain point. Like, I couldn't figure out how. I was so desperate to have somebody do my work for me. I wasn't willing, really, is what it boiled down to, but I thought I wasn't able to take the time to map out what I wanted another person to do. Like, I wasn't planning anything. I was reacting to everything. Not good.
Yeah.
Automation didn't help. I mean, automation helped a little, but it doesn't really, it just gets rid of some of the drudgery, but you can't get rid of all of it with automation. You have to use people.
Yeah, you need a plan, right? Because it's just just to say, I need to automate, right? What an overwhelming task. It's like writing a book, right? I'm going to write a book this year, right? And if you said that as your goal, then you're very unlikely to achieve it. But if you say, right, I'm going to take this step and then this step. So very similar to kind of that analogy that you used earlier. Anything that we do, we need to take, we need to put one foot in front of the other. We just don't appear from the start line to the finish line. We have to take it one step at a time. And, specifically when we do speak with attorneys and lawyers, they do ask, what are the what are the best uses of outsourced support or executive assistance that specifically for this segment? So what have you seen have been maybe specific to the industry, unique ways that people use their assistants?
Well, so I think, first of all, and I know that you guys encourage your assistants to do this, I think when you first start working with an assistant, you may not know all the things you want them to do, but you should meet with them once a week at least, and do it by Zoom so you get to know each other. Because what's the biggest benefit of outsourcing as opposed to automation is, if you tell a computer to do something, it's going to do exactly what you tell it to do when you tell it to do it, even if the conditions don't warrant the action being taken. Whereas a human isn't stupid like that. A human will go, I don't know how to do this, or I have a question. They'll come back to you with a question. So your assistant is going to have questions, and that's great. In the beginning, you want to encourage those questions, because that's how they're going to learn. And that's also how you're going to learn what they don't understand, so that you can, refine your procedures. So that's part of it. Then what are the kinds of things that a person who's working with you can do that's really going to relieve a lot of burden? Well, everybody gets a lot of email, and wouldn't it be nice, if you want breathing room, to not feel like you have to always be checking your business email, but rather somebody else is screening it for you and looking at it, especially if you're on vacation or doing something like that. And they can say, oh, I know how to respond to this, or, oh, I'll have to get back to my boss about this. And at least somebody can respond. That's huge, right? Because a lot of times people are emailing you and they don't get a response. That makes them feel unsettled. And of course, if they're a client, that's not good. So that's a thing that a human can do that a machine can't. You can filter emails with SaneBox and other things, but you're not going to be responding to, you can't respond to emails unless you let a human help you do it. That's a no-brainer. Scheduling sometimes involves questions about what do we do here? That's a no-brainer for a virtual assistant. And that's just, those are the first two obvious ones. I'm sure you have a list of ones that most people need, but those are the ones that, to me, like, almost everyone can benefit from getting help with that. And then if those are the kinds of things you're getting help with, like answering email questions and so forth, that's going to be the springboard to discussions about other things that that person can take on, right? You're going to know, even if you didn't know when you started the relationship, you're going to start thinking, oh, wait, you know what? Could you take this on for me? This comes up every week, then that person can take it on. So you just have to have a good place to get started from. And for me, I was reluctant to use email. See, that's how I failed, like, more than once with virtual assistants. Is I'm like, no, I can do the email because I can automate it all. Well, that was the most obvious thing to give to that person, right? And then that also thwarted my ability to have conversations that led to discovering other things that they could do. So that would be my big recommendation: is don't be afraid to share your business email. And of course, you've dealt with every question that people would have about that. I know you know how to answer those.
Yeah, and I see from Angela here that's she's saying this, the limitation of Zapier, there are limits to the filters. You can't always get to do it, to have it do exactly what you want it to do. And I know that in a lot of productivity conversations, you want to really just have a balance, right? You don't want to reject technology, and you also don't want to reject human support. And it's something that you said made me think, right? What are our expectations? Our expectations of technology, right? And why we want to use it on super repetitive things that don't have a variation that can be solved with technology. And we know that the limitation of that is that there's not going to be variation, right? And that's obvious to us. But sometimes if you put that same kind of way of thinking towards assistants, they're humans, right? And so with humans, there's also human error, and that should be obvious as well. And when you said that, that was just very striking to me, that we get the grace that we sometimes give to technology, we don't give to humans. But so it was, I love the way that you formulated it.
Yeah. Well, I see there's a question from Christina, and I love this question, because first of all, I think, and many people are surprised when I say this, because they think I love technology, and I guess I am tech savvy relative to some other people, but I don't really love technology per se. What I like is not having to do things I don't like doing myself. And I also like having things done automatically if possible, because then, that's easy, right? But my experience in dealing with a lot of tech savvy lawyer people and other people, and people who are not so tech savvy, is that the ones who are not so tech savvy are actually, they're able to learn what I feel like needs to be learned, in many cases, most cases, perhaps faster than the tech savvy people. Now, there's obviously qualifications to that, but does it help you to think outside the box is part of this. But implementing automation is logical thinking. Like when I was a philosophy major at Tulane, they made me take symbolic logic, which I hated because I discovered it was really math under a different name, and I hated math. But the idea was, it was really basic math. It was like, if this happens and this happens, then this happens. Syllogisms: if this, then that; if, and, or, but. These kinds of conditions are really basic building blocks, and anyone can understand this. A 10-year-old can understand this. It should be taught so that people realize it's not that hard. And so that's what systems thinking is. If this happens, then this needs to happen. But wait, let me think about it. Does that need to happen automatically, or do we need to check for this other thing? So it's just getting really specific about the steps by which work gets done. And every kind of work that gets done can be, it's got a pattern to it. It's not a bunch of randomness. I mean, it's not, monkeys typing Shakespeare plays with typewriters. That's not how it works. So being really thoughtful is what's needed. And the
Mhm.
more thoughtful you are in a rigorous way, the more thoughtful you become in other ways. Like it carries forward. And it's not about thinking outside the box when it's systems thinking. That's a whole different thing. Thinking outside the box is if you hit a weird problem and you want to try to solve it in a way and you can't see the solution. Sometimes the solution is not apparent because you're thinking inside of a certain set of parameters, aka the box. But automation is just, it's like basic math when it comes to logic. If this happens, then I want that to happen. But wait, if this happens, what decision needs to be made? So there's decisions, there's resources that need to be brought in. Oh, wait, I need a document. Okay, that's a resource. Oh, wait, I need another person to help me with that. Well, that's a human resource. So you have
Mhm.
to think these things through, but it's not really that hard. It's just we're not used to doing it.
And I would also add that, that piece you were talking about, being thoughtful, that's, I would say that's the prerequisite to anything. And for those individuals that are, that they could learn in theory what needs to be done, but still kind of struggle to get it over the finish line consistently when it comes to automation. That is the stuff that you can get help with, right? No one's
Mhm.
going to do the thinking for you inside of your business for those solutions, but in theory, the automations, the technology that we put in, those are the answers to the real problems that we have come up with. And so you
Mhm.
can, if it's not for you, right, someone can support you with it as well. And Ernie, I know we have, just a few minutes and we're
Yeah.
wrapping up. So I wanted to give just an opportunity for those here who are not familiar with your community, how it works, and just
Mhm.
to give a little bit of information, and maybe just pop in the chat how they can learn more.
Well, I mean, so I started a blog in 2002, which is like the fifth lawyer blog. And there was a mentor of mine who used to call me Ernie the attorney, which wasn't how I thought of myself. I didn't even go by the name Ernie. And she passed away. So when I started this blog, I was thinking of her and I
Mm.
named it Ernie the attorney, and it took off. And that's all of my magical success in getting known was due to that. So all you have to do is Google Ernie the attorney. You can find my blog. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me all over the place. And that's the reason why I chose that name. And so anything that you want, free resources, make use of them. And if you have questions, email me or hit me up on Twitter or LinkedIn or wherever, your fine grocery shelves are located.
It's wonderful. And I
Yeah,
know
you're
that
welcome.
on the on the website, you can also find your community that you've
Mm,
created. And that's something new, a project for you. And Tiffany and I have had the opportunity to be in there and to interact. And it is just so meaningful, right? To be able to get the support from others that are walking similar paths in the industry. So thank you for putting that in there for anyone that's interested. That's been, from our perspective, has been such a nice resource, and a lot of our clients are in there because we're introduced through you, and we can see
mhm.
the amount of benefit they get. So really something
Yeah,
we recommend to check out.
yeah, yeah. No, happy to help in any whatever I can. But thank you for having me on.
Thank you.
You are, as I've said this to other folks, I'll say it again here. I think the hardest thing when you're trying to build a business is finding people who have not only the knowledge, the expertise, because you can find those people, but then also their values are aligned in the right way. And the right way, in my view, is I value people whose values are, I want to help somebody, even if that means I don't get paid to do it. So like if they come to me and they say I want this, and you go, well, that's cool, you think I can sell that you that, and I could, but really here's the better way to go about that, or here's the first step, and just go do that and don't worry about it. You are one of those people, and so you have knowledge and the right values, and I cherish finding people like that because they're so rare. And also you're good natured and friendly and have a positive mindset. So it's just been a pleasure and an honor for me to work with you. So thank you.
Thank you. We feel the same. We feel this way about, Tiffany and I, we talk about this all the time. We feel this way about our communities, our partners, and it's so beyond the business transactions. We feel the community coming together, and that's why for me it's so fun having this conversation. And I saw Angela kind of like so connected that the words that you're using are the words that we're using. Like it's so so to be that in line, and you use words like, kind of people being mind readers for you. And, we know that it's not possible for people to be reading your minds all the time, but to have that connectivity and kind of respect. And like you said, kind of when the values match, and that's what's been really meaningful about connecting with our communities here, especially in this way. This office hours is new for us. So it's also been, it's been really special. Ernie, thank you so much for this opportunity, for your knowledge, and thank you.
Yeah, thank you everybody for joining. Appreciate it. All right.
Thanks. Bye.